Thanks so much for streaming with us this afternoon. I'm Tom Haynes, live in the Fox 5 Atlanta newsroom. We're so glad you're here, and we're joined by a special guest, U.S. Senator Jon Ossoff from our nation's capital, there at the U.S. Senate. He's here to talk about a new online safety initiative that he's co-championing and some new data that just came out that he will share with us. Senator, thank you so much for being with us, and congratulations on baby number 2.
Thank you so much, Tom. Lila is almost 4 months now and healthy, thank God. And her big sister, Eva, is 3. It's hard to believe, but it's such a blessing to have 2 healthy kids in the house.
You're outnumbered by the ladies, right? At home now.
Yes, indeed.
We'll get to the online safety initiative for children in just a moment. First, you are running for re-election next year, and it'll no doubt be a tight race between you and your eventual Republican contender. One poll has you just within points of, say, Derek Dooley, who the governor, as you know, has endorsed if he is the nominee. Will President Trump's 2024 victory here shape the way you run for re-election?
No, I'm going to run as I have governed, which is for every part of the state, for everyone in the state, no matter your income level, no matter your race, no matter whether you supported me when I first ran for the Senate. Georgia is my priority every day. I look forward to continuing to deliver for Georgia as I run for re-election over the next year and a half.
Your campaign will coincide, as you know, with the gubernatorial race. Who do you see as the Democratic standout? We know Stacey Abrams went on a listening tour back in June. Keisha Lance Bottoms, the former Atlanta mayor, is in the race. Jason Estevez just resigned his state Senate seat to run. So who do you see as the Democratic frontrunner at this point?
I think it'll be a vigorous Democratic primary, and that'll be a decision for the voters. So we will see as the months go by and that campaign unfolds.
All right, Senator, we just got word just within the past hour or so of the delayed departure of a Korean Airlines charter jet that will take hundreds of South Koreans back home who are working at the Hyundai plant, as you know, illegally. Governor Kemp releasing a statement saying, in part, quote, "All companies operating within the state must follow the laws of Georgia and our nation." What is your reaction to the Hyundai raid and the president's push for immigration enforcement?
Well, indeed, all employers in Georgia must follow U.S. labor law. And I think we need answers both from the companies involved and also from the Trump administration. Hyundai and LG need to address these allegations of violations at their construction site. We also need more information from a Department of Homeland Security about the raid and who they detained and on what basis. And as all that information is pursued, we need strong communication between the U.S. and South Korean governments, because this has caused a diplomatic incident, in order to ensure that these facilities are indeed built, that they come online and employ thousands of Georgians in manufacturing jobs as they promised to.
All right, let's shift gears now and talk about the CDC. A lot has been happening there, especially over the last month. We understand that fired CDC Director Susan Monarez will testify before the Senate next week. The president campaigned and won on shaking up bureaucracy and even touted RFK Jr. as his HHS secretary, who you called on to be fired. Is the CDC, as Secretary Kennedy said, the most corrupt agency in the federal government? And since the president ran on those reforms, what's wrong with a re-examination of the agency?
Well, first, I think that's an absurd statement from Secretary Kennedy. The CDC remains the foremost agency in the country and indeed the world to fight deadly disease. And I have no problem with reform. This isn't reform. This is demolition. This is reckless and chaotic destruction. You know, in Secretary Kennedy's case, look, it's one thing to be a reformer or to be a skeptic. It's quite another to be a fool and a wrecking ball. And since he took office, he has systematically destroyed the CDC, not to mention that a gunman, apparently inspired by extremist anti-vaccine ideology, fired hundreds of rounds at this sensitive federal facility, killing a DeKalb County police officer, and Secretary Kennedy was too busy on a fishing trip to respond properly to that attack. I welcome reform and I welcome vigorous scientific debate, but recklessly firing nearly a quarter of the workforce, systematically demoralizing an agency that is protecting children and families in Georgia from infectious disease is reckless and foolish, and it leaves the American public more vulnerable to a future pandemic and to infectious disease.
All right, Senator, as you know, the president has enlisted the National Guard to clean up crime in Washington, D.C. The mayor, Muriel Bowser, told MSNBC not too long ago that the president is interested in being in neighborhoods, fighting crime in neighborhoods. She has since walked back that statement. What do you think now about our own governor, Governor Brian Kemp, sending 300 National Guard troops from Georgia into D.C. to join that initiative?
Well, look, the foremost purpose of the United States Armed Forces is to defend the United States from our foreign enemies. And of course, the National Guard plays an important role as well when there is a crisis domestically, a natural disaster, or a true breakdown of civil order. But in my view, American soldiers' purpose is not to police American cities. And that should only ever be a last resort in a true case of civil unrest or insurrection. And I don't believe that the American people want armed U.S. troops as our domestic police force. That is the job of domestic law enforcement.
Do you feel safer in our nation's capital? I mean, you live there, you walk the streets, you go out to dinner. Is the National Guard making a difference?
I can't speak to the local impact in our nation's capital. I would defer to local leadership here. But what I can tell you is we should bear in mind that National Guard personnel are volunteers who commit their time to be available in a crisis when that hurricane hits, in, God forbid, a situation where there's a breakdown of domestic order, or most importantly, to supplement our active duty military when our nation comes under attack from a foreign government. I don't think that these men and women who have jobs and families back at home sign up in order to pour mulch at public parks in our nation's capital. These are brave Americans who wear the uniform to defend the nation. They should not be treated like a political prop.
All right, Senator, let's talk about this initiative that is near and dear to your heart. And I think all parents, frankly, I'm one of them, will welcome. And that is the Kids Online Safety Act. You were mentioning to me just before we went on together some new numbers that just came up. Tell us about the initiative, the legislation, and your letter to the Secretary of Education about cybersecurity.
I have, as you know, young children at home. And the bottom line is that the internet is not a safe place for children. And tech companies and social media companies have been allowing children to be exploited on their platforms. Last year, I wrote and passed into law a bipartisan bill bringing Republicans and Democrats together. It's called the Report Act. The Report Act, now law, for the first time requires these tech companies to report to the authorities any evidence they encounter on their platform of sexual enticement or sexual trafficking of children. Can you believe, Tom, that before I pass this bill into law, a social media company might come across evidence that a child's being sexually enticed online, but not report that? And indeed, in many cases, they were not reporting that. Well, what does that mean? That means that that sexual predator can continue to approach that child. Law enforcement's not informed, and that child may be victimized. That is why I wrote that bill, passed it into law. And what have we seen since I passed it into law? We have seen hundreds of thousands of new reports of sexual enticement of children going to the authorities, because now the tech companies are held accountable. They must make those reports. And I will continue working to protect children by holding big tech accountable, to ensure that these platforms are not places where predators can roam freely and target our kids.
All right. Senator Jon Ossoff, we know we'll be seeing a lot of you over the next year as you begin your campaign for 2026. Senator, thanks so much for being with us this afternoon.